What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Subscribe if you guys are new and make sure you all turn on your post notifications so you can see when I do new videos. But today we're going to talk about how to get a full-time job. So I am here at my desk and I have a list of things in front of me, so if you see me looking down, it's because I am looking at my list of tips and tricks that I made for you guys. It's really long, but yeah, let's get this video started. So first we're going to talk about the pre-application process. So before you even start searching, before you even start applying, you're going to want to create a resume, the dreaded resume. You might have created one in high school for a project or in college for a project, but you're going to want to spend some intentional time on this, not just for school but for yourself, because your resume is everything. People and employers are going to judge a book by their cover, aka they're going to judge you by your resume. So you want to make sure it looks good. So these are my resume tips. First, you're going to want to keep it clean and simple design wise. So you're going to want to make sure that you're not using too many colors, you're not using too many design elements and shapes and things like that. Just keep it really clean and really simple. Next, you're going to want to highlight your experiences using quantitative data, meaning that you should be using numbers in your little bullet points as much as you can. So I'm going to put a picture of my resume on the screen and just cover up, my personal information. But you can see that under the very last experience on my resume, which is when I was at NYU Housing Ambassador for New York University, all of my bullet points, or mostly all of them, use numbers. So this is something that employers love to see. I actually need to be working on this on my resume and kind of get better at it, but you should always be using quantitative data. My next recommendation or tip is you should feel free, and I encourage you to change your resume from job to job. So if you're applying for a graphic designer position like I do, I have a marketing degree, but I also am a graphic designer. So if I'm applying for a graphic design position, I might have different experiences on my resume than if I were applying for a marketing position. So you can feel free to do that. That's highly encouraged. Employers aren't going to want to hear about experiences that aren't applicable to the position you're applying for. My next thing on the resume is, if you're a creative, you do have more room to add different design elements to your resume like I was talking about before, but you still want to make sure you're keeping it clean and polished looking, overall professional. So like I said, will show you guys my resume. I am a graphic designer. I've had crazy resumes, I've had colored resumes, and so far the one that I'm showing you guys right now is the one that's worked the best for me. I kept it black and white. I still added elements with the little black boxes and a pretty font, but don't go too crazy, not too many colors, not too many fonts. Just keep it really, really nice looking. Programs that I recommend for doing your resume, I do mine in Adobe InDesign, which is just a design software. It's pretty common, but if you don't know how to use that or you don't have it, you can use canva.com. It's free, and they actually have resume templates, so you can have a great starting point and just fill in your information. So highly recommend those. Okay, my next resume tip is to be sure to include your portfolio link if that's applicable to you. So if you are like me, if you're a graphic designer, or maybe you're an engineer and you've worked on some really cool projects, I think you should always have an online portfolio. You could go to any of those websites like Weebly or Squarespace and make a free website. I don't think it needs to be anything too crazy, but employers are going to want to see your work and see what you can do. So always include your portfolio link on your resume. You guys can see that mine's at the top. It's highlighted really big. It hasn't always been like this, but lately people have been asking me if I have a portfolio, even though it's in my About Me section, so I realized that I need to highlight it more, so I put it right at the top. And lastly, for the pre-application process, if you really want to stand out and you really want a certain job and there's an option to upload a cover letter, write the cover letter. It totally sucks. It takes forever, especially because you have to make it specific to each company and position. But if you write a cover letter and the 20 other applicants didn't write a cover letter, chances are they're going to reach yours first because you put in the most effort and you look like you cared the most about that position. So if there's an optional cover letter, always write it. I'm not going to act like I always write one. Sometimes I just skip it, especially if I'm applying for 5 jobs in one day. However, it will definitely make you stand out with that employer. Okay, now we're going to move on to searching and applying for jobs. So I want to start with my favorite job platforms where I like to search for jobs, and these are going to be in order of my favorites. I have 4 that I'm going to list. There are tons and tons of job platforms out there, and you can definitely use other ones. It's really personal preference. But my top favorite is LinkedIn. I feel like they always have the most results. They have the most filters that you can filter out different jobs with, and it's just the most well organized. So number 1, LinkedIn. Number 2, Google Jobs. Number 3, Glassdoor. And number 4, Handshake. The only thing with Handshake is that you can only use it if you work with a specific university or institution. So if you guys want to know if you're eligible, just go to handshake.com and type in your school or your employer or anything like that, and you can see if it will let you make an account. But Handshake is my least favorite. There's not a lot of job listings on there, but sometimes that is a place where you can find unique job listings. So moving along, I have my tips for job searching. So when you're applying for a full-time job, I think you should be searching every single day. I mean, if you skip a day, it's not a big deal. It's not like a workout routine where if you skip a day, you're gonna fall off track, at least for me. However, I do recommend that you search every single day. Jobs are going up all the time, especially with LinkedIn. You can use a feature, there's a filter of date posted, so you can say I want to look at all the jobs that were posted in the last 24 hours. So that way if you're searching every single day, you don't have to go through all of the ones you've already seen and possibly miss a new one because you're just scrolling and scrolling. So I would definitely recommend going on LinkedIn and searching for jobs in the past 24 hours and just checking that every 1 to 2 days. So my next tip with that, with searching for a job, would be to start your search earlier than you might think. So if you're going to graduate in December in a autumn semester, you should be looking for jobs in September and start applying by October. You can have something set up for when you graduate. Same goes for May. So if you're graduating in May, I think you should really start looking in February and applying in March. My next tip for searching for jobs is when you click on a job listing on one of these searching platforms, I think that you should just scroll all the way to the bottom and look for the qualifications or requirements section of that job listing and see how many years of experience are required. So if you scroll all the way down and the job listing requires 10 years of experience and you only have 2, it's not even worth your time to read that listing. However, if you scroll through it and it says 2 years of experience and you have 1.5 or 1.75, read through it and see what else it says. Which brings me to my last tip on this, which would be remember the 80-20 rule. I didn't learn this until this year, and it is so helpful and really true. So if you lack 20% of the qualifications or requirements for a job position, but you're eager and willing to put in the work and learn, and you have the other 80%, you should still apply. So just because you don't meet every single requirement doesn't mean you can't get the job or won't get the job. A lot of skills can be taught, and I think that if you can put in the work and you are willing to put in the work, then the employer will still consider you if you have 80% of the other qualifications, especially if you exceed in that other 80%. So if you match that 80-20 rule, you should definitely still apply. Moving right along, we're gonna talk about interviewing. So my biggest tip with interviewing that you always have to follow is do your research, okay? Don't go into an interview without any prep, without any research, without anything, because that will set you up to fail. It's really true. So do your research. By do your research, I mean that you should research the company, you should prep some answers for questions, and I'm gonna dig into how I do all of that. So before every interview, I make a Google Doc, and I showed this in one of my past vlogs, so you might have already heard this. Feel free to skip if you've already heard this, but I'm gonna say it again. Before every interview, I make a Google Doc that highlights the specific company I'm interviewing for's mission, their values, their tagline, their pillars, whatever their company was founded on, etc. And I just compile all of that information so that I'm well educated and I can use that information in my interview. So for instance, in an interview, a company might ask you, why do you want to work for our company? If you did your research and you know a lot about the company, you could say, I know that your company was founded on the value of integrity. And I relate heavily to this because integrity is something that I believe heavily in, and it's the core of my existence, and blah blah blah. You can go any way with that. That kind of got deep. But you can use their mission, their tagline, or their company pillars to answer their question, and that shows that you really care and that you're not just applying there to apply there. You actually want to work there. So I highly recommend doing that research. The next thing I do on this Google Doc is I write down some commonly asked interview questions, such as, tell me about yourself, where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years, all kinds of questions like that that are really commonly asked in interviews, and I write my answers. So that way I can practice my answers and I can be really prepared to answer these questions when they come up, and I don't look shocked or like I don't know what to say when they ask those questions. My next interview question is to not take notes or open your Padfolio. If you guys, let me show you my Padfolio in case you don't know what it is. Okay, so this is a Padfolio. I have two. So I have this one that says The Ohio State University Fisher College of Business, which is a college I graduated from. And when you open them, they usually have some pockets and then some notebook paper, etc. I also have this one which zips, and this one says MMC, Media Marketing and Communication Scholars, which is the scholars group I was in college. So if you have one of these, I do recommend taking it to your interview. You can put your resume in there, you can have your questions written down, but I would not recommend opening it or looking at it until the end when they say, do you have any questions? Otherwise, this can look like you are careless. It can look like you're distracted if you're writing or looking down at your Padfolio. So don't open that during the interview. My next interview tip is if you have a physical portfolio or you are creative of any sort, make sure you have work prepared to show the employer if the time is right. So if they ask what are some projects you've worked on that could help you in this position, you can pull out your portfolio and show them some. So I'm a designer, like I said, a graphic designer, and I have a physical portfolio. So maybe if they asked, what's a project that you've worked on that you think could apply to our company, I could pull out a folder that I made. So I have this folder and I can say, I designed this folder. We want to keep it very simple, but with touches of branding from our foundation, which I have here, and you can just talk about these different projects. Maybe they focus a lot on direct mail. You could show, I have a lot of stuff, but you could show them some direct mailers that you've done and just show that the work you've done is good and it applies to the position that you're applying for. My next tip here with interviewing is to always have questions. So I mentioned that you can have questions in your Padfolio and open it at the end. At the end of almost every interview, everyone I've ever been in, the employer will ask you, do you have any questions for me? And you should always say yes. Always have questions. If you take something away from this, do your research and always have questions. I think those are the most important tips. So I write down questions in the Google Doc that I was talking about earlier. You can also write them down on paper, either are fine. But when the employer asks you, do you have any questions for me? You can respond, yes, I wrote some down. I'm gonna open my Padfolio and look at them or whatever, and then you can start asking them your questions. So some of my favorite really general questions that you guys could use would be, what is a day in the life of position, so graphic designer, look like at your company? And they can tell you about the day-to-day, whether the job is pretty, consistent and you do the same thing every day, or if it's different and ever-changing and evolving. You can also ask the employer, how long have you been at this company and what's your favorite part? This is my favorite question to ask everyone because I genuinely love hearing how long people have worked for the company I'm applying for and what they love about it. You can also ask about the culture. I think culture is one of the most important parts of a job. If you don't fit in with the culture or like the people, you're gonna have a really hard time working there. So you can ask about their office culture, their company culture, anything like that. But always have questions, at least 3. You don't even have to ask them all. If it goes really well and you think of something on the spot, you can ask that instead, but just have questions prepared in case you don't think of any during the interview. And now we're already on to the final part, which is the post-interview process. So at the end of the interview, it is perfectly acceptable for you to ask when you should expect to hear back from that employer. So if you get to the end of the interview and it was just the first round and you know there probably will be more, or you think there will be a decision being made next, you can ask, when should I expect to hear back from you? That's acceptable, that's perfectly okay, and if you really would like to know, then go ahead and ask. But I think the most important thing post-interview would be to send a follow-up thank you. So you're going to do this by sending a professional email. You can do this on paper through the mail, but I would definitely recommend email just with the COVID era of things. But you'll send a professional email to the person that interviewed you, thanking them for their time and thanking them for the opportunity in general. But what I highly recommend doing here is mentioning something very specific from your interview. So if you found out that you went to the same college as your interviewer, you can say, it was so amazing to learn that you also went to the Ohio State University and studied XYZ. I really would love to hear more about your experience, and I just thank you so much for talking to me today. Can't wait to hear from you soon. Thanks. You could also mention maybe something about the job. I really loved learning that this job includes XYZ because that's something I really value and love, and I loved talking to you today. Thank you. So you can word this in a number of different ways, but when you mention that specific detail from your interview, they'll remember that, they'll know that you care, they'll know that you listened, and that you really genuinely want to work there and are just thankful and grateful for that opportunity. With that email though, I would recommend having a professional signature. So if you don't have an email signature, I would definitely recommend going online. You can go to even like, there are websites where you can make a signature for free and they'll just put it all together all nice and pretty. So I'll show you guys my email signature. I think it's cute, really simple, but yeah. So now I have one last overall tip, and this is in the post-interview process, and this is dealing with facing rejection or getting through a certain number of interviews and then you don't get the job. So you guys know I recently applied for a job and I was really excited. I made it through three rounds of interviews, and I did find out this week that I did not get the job. And my tip with this would be to try to not get too attached to any job or any company or any position. So I think it's really great to be excited about opportunities. I'm excited about every opportunity that I get. I'm excited about everything. I'm excited about life. I get excited very easily, and I think that's great. And I would definitely encourage you to be excited about things that you're applying for. However, it's really important to remember that you don't want to work somewhere where you're uncomfortable or somewhere where you're not wanted. So figuring that out very early in the process is a really, really good thing. You know, a lot of people will tell you when you face rejection that if it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't supposed to be your job. And that's true, but it's hard to hear, and it's also not super constructive or helpful. So I want to send you guys with that, just knowing that you're not a good fit, even though it might be hard. Maybe you're not a good fit for them or they're not a good fit for you, but either way, knowing that is very, very important. It's a good thing. So I am quick-winded and I talk really fast, but I want to make sure this video was short enough for you guys. I hope it's not too outrageously long, but I thank you guys so much for watching this. And if you guys want to know more job stuff, definitely give this a like. I have so much more I could talk about, what to wear to an interview, all kinds of things. I can go in depth about any of the things I talked about today. But I am just so thankful for you guys. Thank you for watching, and I'm just going to end it here. I will see you guys in the next one. I love you, and yeah, bye.